All right, we're back for chapter 4. We've been doing this for 4 weeks consistently. Remarkable. Very remarkable. And I think something bigger is going to come out of this. But let me pray on it before I tell y'all. All right, chapter 4. Real ain't perfect and perfect ain't real. To understand where I'm at, you've got to understand where I came from. Let's take a journey backwards, shall we? To folks that were close to us, excuse me, our family was the reincarnation of Little House on the Prairie growing up. I grew up in a 2-parent household and we did fairly well. My dad cooked the meals, worked the fields, and paid the bills. My mom also worked and raised the kids. We went to church 7 days a week at one point, and we were all around good kids. To the outside world, we were the picture of perfection. And if my nuclear family was the picture of perfection, I was the golden child that descended from the golden family. I was the one that folks wanted their daughters to be like. And even as a kid, I greatly disliked folks telling others to be like me. It felt dirty or icky. And I just didn't understand why someone would suggest that their child should be like me when I didn't even want to be like me. I was trapped, and they were suggesting that someone willfully take on the role I played. I couldn't make sense of that. And don't misunderstand me, I was loved very well. My folks have always cherished and appreciated me, but when your vantage point is obstructed, you can only see what you can only see. I was reading Disruptive Thinking by T.D. Jakes, and I think he brought to light what I was feeling then, but I didn't know how to express it. There's certain pressure that's placed on the one. The pressure can create diamonds or bust pipes. Generally speaking, the pressure isn't intentionally applied, but more the byproduct of having folks around you that know what you're capable of. These folks see you, your potential and talents, and they believe in you. They support you. They sometimes even push you into your greatness. And unknowingly, they apply pressure. As the saying goes, the same water that boils the frog cooks the egg. I was that one in my family, or I felt like I was. Anything I've ever done, there was always someone there to support me. Everyone in the family knew my favorite color was purple and that I loved SpongeBob. Anytime any of them ran past something that was purple or SpongeBob, they bought it and gave it to me. I was that kid. When I graduated high school, the bleachers were full. When I graduated college, people came from all over the world. When I graduated with my master's, it was just as eventful. They threw parties for me in my honor to celebrate me. They've always told me how beautiful and well-loved I was. They have always been in my corner. And I'm sure there are folks shaking their heads right now, frowning at me because they're trying to figure out my problem. The thing, though, is I've already told you my problem. I didn't love myself, so I didn't see these things as love. I saw them as a need for me to perfect. I saw them as a need for me to be perfect, to be accepted and loved. There wasn't a problem created by my family. There was nothing they could have done differently. That problem was created inside of me, and I didn't know how to navigate it. I just knew that I needed to keep performing, to keep receiving the love and affection that I had grown used to. When I was in high school, I remember thinking that I never wanted to be popular because popularity was a job. And it dawned on me while writing this chapter that I was speaking from experience. I was popular in my family, and that was exhausting. Hear me out before you tune me out. In society, we are taught to perform from the very start. When a child is born, there are milestones that said child should reach by a certain time to prevent being labeled or diagnosed. As a child grows, there's the continued need to meet preset milestones or standardizations. As a child grows into a teenager, there are more milestones. Then one becomes an adult, and most of us perform on a daily basis. We have things such as performance evaluations and various tests that we must pass. In fact, I don't think we stop performing until retirement, but even it's laden with its own demons. I'm not saying that having goals is bad, so don't misunderstand me. I'm offering that we encourage folks to live their lives, but when do we give them the opportunity? If they don't perform up to par, they're outcasted, labeled, or diagnosed. And I'm not against any of these things because everything exists for a reason. However, what is the intent behind the label or the diagnoses? Folks are labeled as having ADHD and various diagnoses on the spectrum. But what if they just see the world differently? What if the world just looks different from their vantage point? What if they don't need the label, but society does? After all, the standardization of everything kills the individualization of anything. That is, when these folks don't meet the standard, they're now considered outliers for simply not performing up to the standard. But what if the standard were the issue from the start? I think back to when my oldest was born. She was the perfect baby, though she'd given us quite a few scares during pregnancy. But once she was here, and she belonged to us. She was an excellent baby who didn't cry a lot and didn't fuss a lot. She was that baby that tricks you into having another because you think all babies are like her. And it worked. We had another. And though they are both gifts from God, they are nothing alike. They were nothing alike as babies. Nothing. By the time my oldest was just over 2, their dad and I split up. Not too long after, I started noticing differences in the way that my daughter spoke. I was broken, and miserable, so I missed a lot of things, but I caught this one. The thing, though, was that I attributed her speech issues to her dad and I having split, and wasn't really keen on how to resolve these issues. To me, it was her naturally regressing because she missed him. And that just added to the guilt that I felt for having destroyed my perfect family. That then fueled my depression and entered a vicious cycle. As time passed, I wasn't the only one who noticed that her words didn't sound on par for a child her age. And despite how smart she's always been, correcting her speech wasn't working. To make matters worse, I reinforced her mispronunciation of words by cheering her on rather than correcting her. In my defense, I didn't want her to feel like she was always the problem, so rather than correcting her, I played along and fueled her misapprehension, misunderstanding, mispronunciations. I was the problem, again. Her speech was so misunderstood that there was a time where I had to be in the room for anyone to have a conversation with her. Someone would ask her a question, she would answer. They would then look to me to translate, and we'd rinse and repeat until the conversation was over. The issue was her voice wasn't being heard. Her words weren't being heard. She wasn't being heard, and I'm sure folks were tired of having to go through me to get to my child. These were her people too. Now, my baby has always had the gift of gab, like her mother, and I eventually saw that my approach was a Band-Aid, an awfully placed one, but a Band-Aid nonetheless. As she approached school age, I didn't want her in a physical classroom for several reasons, mainly because I firsthand know the impact of being bullied. And my mentality has always been that a speech impediment can be corrected. But if her self-esteem is destroyed, we're looking at a very different beast. And I didn't want her facing that Goliath at such an early age. Fortunately, I was able to place her in a virtual public charter school. And to my surprise, the school offered speech therapy services. I felt like I could finally breathe because she had someone dedicated to help her navigate what I couldn't. I didn't know how to help her. And because of my work schedule, my options were severely limited, which is partially why she wasn't in speech therapy to begin with. So this school was a heaven sent, literally. Fast forward a few years, and my daughter made a decision that she wanted to attend public school in person. She'd grown tired of virtual school and wanted to branch out and make friends. At this point, my youngest was school age also, and he too wanted to go to public school. So we pulled the plug on virtual school, and they are both in public school, and they love it. And what's better, my daughter is excelling in speech therapy. Her confidence is so high that she wants to start a YouTube channel reading to kids. Why am I telling you any of this? Because God used my daughter to teach me that perfection ain't real. I am a highly educated, intelligent, well-spoken, humble, yet educated, brilliant woman. My accolades far exceed any room that my feet enter, and I do not say any of that to boast. I say it to admit that I didn't understand how God gave me a child that wasn't perfect. When my daughter was young, I had all these plans of her learning multiple languages and being advanced and studious for a kid her age. I just knew that she'd break all the standards set for her and achieve far above anything even I could fathom. My kids were going to be reading and writing by a certain age, and I could hear the crowd applaud just how well raised and amazing they were. But my reality looked nothing like what I dreamed it would look like. In fact, my reality had the imperfection of a speech impediment, and that just didn't fit in with my idea of perfect. And when my daughter started school, the imperfection grew into SPED classes and an IEP. And though these services were helping her, I didn't know how to process that my child, the child of a golden child, wasn't golden. Now, my kids will someday read my writing, and I want to be really clear. My daughter was never the issue. God used her speech impediment as sort of a hip limp. Think Jacob in the Bible. Her speech impediment is my reminder that God is with me, and it's an opportunity for God to show us just how capable He is. My child has mastered so many things, and her confidence is definitely one. So she isn't, nor was she ever, the problem. The problem was always my viewpoint of perfection. Because of my infatuation with appearances and perfection, I could have destroyed one of the most important people in my life. And that thought hurts, even if it were unintentional. God used my daughter to show me that perfection is her being exactly who He designed her to be. Every quirk about her adds to who she is. The stepping stones that she must cross don't define or devalue her. They're merely part of her journey to self. And what I really learned is that I never needed to be perfect to be loved. Follow me here. If I could love my child who needs services to help her become the best version of herself, then that disproved my theory that perfection is required to obtain love. God used my child to give me a direct message. I never had to be perfect to receive love. Folks love me in spite of my mistakes. They love me in spite of my quirks. Those things are but facets of me. The whole of me and the parts of me are all lovable. My child needing speech therapy has been a blessing because it's what gave me permission to love myself just as I am. And it's allowed me to reprocess my childhood and recognize that my family never required perfection. That was my distortion. They merely loved me. They loved me. My ex-fiance that I told y'all about in chapter 3, he didn't require me to be perfect. He just needed me to be me. He loved me. If you've never been captive to the cloak of perfection, this might not make sense or may seem ordinary to you. But to people who felt like love required perfection or performance, I hope y'all feel the chains falling off. Let me tell you clearly. All love requires is for you to be you. That's it. Remember, for God so loved that He gave. He gave because of His love, not your performance nor your perfection. And if He deems you lovable, who are you to say otherwise? Message. Perfection ain't real. It's a man-made social construct. God never required perfection, just progression. And God is synonymous with love, so then love also never required perfection. Life is messy, and it's filled with plenty of mistakes, and that's okay. Just remember to pray, pivot, and progress. Let go of what it was supposed to be, and free yourself to experience what it is and what it can become. I assure you, the freedom alone will set a fire in you that cannot be extinguished. Action item. I want you to review these questions and kind of mull them over before you write out the answers. What in your life didn't go as planned? What do you deem as not perfect in your life? After you've answered those questions, consider if the problem isn't the lack of perfection, but instead your lack of perspective. That is, if you change how you view the things you identified, What new lessons did you learn? Love y'all.